Hey, what's going on, everybody? Today is January 3rd, and this is the Daily AI Show. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Today we got a lot of the crew here, which is super cool. We got Robert, Beth, Andy, Carl, I'm Brian. And today is Wednesday, and nothing has changed. So as far as we're concerned, every Wednesday going into the future, we'll be covering all the AI news we thought was important, and we'll pass it on to you guys. And you can kind of take from that and figure out, even if you're not necessarily following all of the latest and get newsletters and up on it. Our goal is that every Wednesday you can get some of the top stories in AI to keep you up to date. So with that, I will kick it off. I know there's been not a ton of news in the last 7 days. There's always a lot of fun stuff. It seems like there was one story that seemed to be getting more of the limelight. I don't know what you guys think, but it felt like the New York Times story suing OpenAI definitely seemed to be the story that over the last few days seems to have most of the news headlines. What do you guys think?
I think what we're seeing is the impact, right? So the first stories that came out were like, this is happening. And now we're getting a bunch of stories about why the case is better than Sarah Silverman's case, or like if they rule this way, what are the other dominoes that could fall?
And Robert, you were reminding us that OpenAI is raising $100 billion. This is part of the reason that they need to. they're gonna lawyer up
to pay the fees of the litigation.
Yeah. And in arrears too. They'll probably have to pay some. They could potentially have to pay some penalties.
So I didn't read into this one a ton, but I feel like it was a video from Matt Wolf, but a few days ago, and I just didn't have time to go back and check. But I feel like when he was talking about this particular lawsuit, that in this particular case, it wasn't a simple prompt that then resulted in almost a word-for-word copy of something that was on the New York Times. In fact, they had to use the chat version, gave it the blog, and gave it some other precursors like information, and then it pulled the information back. And I think what Matt was saying, and I might be wrong on who I heard this from, but it was like, well, okay, there seems to be a lot more here. If you bring in the chat function of ChatGPT, well, it's likely to go out and then scrape that article or that blog or whatever, right, and then bring back summaries of it. I mean, that's happened many, many times where, it puts the citations and stuff like that. So there might be a lot more to this. And I think what'll be interesting is exactly, as well as with the Sarah Silverman case, exactly how did they prompt? Was it in a brand new chat window? And oh my God, that's our article. I mean, that is a problem for sure. Or was there more nuance to it? So it's an interesting case.
Well, and my question is, how did they get past the paywall? Are they getting the data? Are they like, how does that work? How does OpenAI scrape it?
AI got past the paywall, right? Like computers can talk to computers.
So here's a So here's a little. If any of you use Perplexity, gets past any paywall. Anyone, like I would go to ChatGPT, can't do it. Goes browse with Bing. Perplexity, everything I can summarize.
So I don't know. Give me the top articles from Wall Street Journal today. It will do it.
I don't know if I ask it like that. Usually what I do is just, hey, if I get to an article I can't read and I don't want to do the JavaScript like method, then I just go to Perplexity and be like, okay, I don't want to read the article anyway. I just need to just give me the key points, and it would pop the key points. That's it.
Right. So, and this was true. Like it used to be true that you could read the article if you went to like you could reset your stuff if you went to what is it called? Incognito browser mode? An incognito browser. Thank you.
Right.
And then that got fixed, right? It used to be that when you change your stuff on Chatbase, that got fixed, right? So it's a series of rollouts, I think.
It's just
good point, Brian.
And just to wrap this particular one up before we jump into other news, I mean, another part of this too is, I guess my understanding was that this is sort of a precedent or New York Times has a history of like lawyering up and suing to protect, especially when they feel like it has implications that go far into the future, a sea change like AI as far as it comes to content and stuff. So this isn't necessarily unusual for them. In other cases, it said that maybe other companies have chosen not to sue because really what they want is for OpenAI just to pay their fees, their dues, in order to have access to get the rights to that data or whatever the case may be. And so maybe there's more to it. It's complex nonetheless. It'll be interesting to see as it sort of uncovers over the next couple of weeks. It kind of just came out in the news in the last week, but there's definitely more to dig in here. And I think it's going to be people really looking and saying, okay, what exactly did they do? What are they claiming can happen? Could you could any user reproduce that? Or is this a one-off thing? I think there's a lot to be unpacked there. And maybe just a quick pivot to it, and just to talk quickly about Midjourney.
Hold on. I don't want to go to Midjourney yet. I want to stay on this one real quick.
On this one? Okay.
Yeah, because I want to share this particular article, which is funny because it's Apple deciding to go, you know what, we'll go ahead and just, pay you, New York Times, for your content so that we can use it to train our AI. So it's interesting that the Apple is, I'm not to go too off get base, but I love the fact that when you just heard in the news, New York Times is suing OpenAI, you hear Apple's trying to negotiate with New York Times for their content. And that's kind of interesting. I think that Apple is always been slow to market. They always come out 5 years later after, the Samsung has developed a technology, and then Apple comes out and says, look what we got. And Samsung's had it for years, kind of thing. So I think that Apple's always slow to bring up stuff, but I think there's
Wait a second. I got to push back on that one. Apple leads the way, and all of the Android features that are then incorporated are based on the novel UI and the advances in smartphones that Apple originated. So
be that as it may, they're always they take longer to come to market with basic user interface or user technologies that other phone companies have had out for years, and they've been accused of that for years. So we're not saying anything that's like not known. The fingerprint has been on many phones, and the facial recognition has been on many phones before they came out with it and claim that they're the best of the best. But I'm an Apple fanboy, so don't get me wrong.
I am an Apple fanboy.
Okay.
There was one.
Somebody going to talk about Samsung?
Yeah. I just wanted to just mention about how Apple licensed the news. I think that's what's eventually is going to happen. Is remember that OpenAI was in talks with New York Times, and that those talks broke down. I just feel it's too lucrative to allow this to go to a jury or a judge rulement. It's too much money. So eventually there will be a dollar amount that will appease both parties, and everyone's going to be like, yay, we're all excited. So I was like, I think this is more of a legal tactic rather than actual, I'm going to sue you and I'm really, really mad. No, it's like, I just want more money.
Right.
It's interesting to me too that the New York Times is central as a reservoir of legitimate content, and it's only recently that I think a very prominent politician said that it's the failing New York Times and it's going to fall by the wayside. It's really at the heart and center now of what is happening with the world of fresh content.
It's a good point, actually. Yeah.
And look, my opinion on this, before we pivot to maybe Samsung and like I said, other things going on in the news is, New York Times should get their money. I mean, that content, if it was originated, if their writers wrote it, we know the content, online content, newspaper industry, whatever you want to call it, transitioning to online years ago, and then paywalls and whether that was going to work and all that stuff. I mean, this is people's livelihood. So, if they've employed people.
Shall we do the slippery slope of that argument? I want to be paid for my blog post that I did on Reddit and that they scraped and use it to train the model. There's a lot that can be said. If we're gonna say that news articles are the only ones that can get compensated for training a model, what about the hundreds and thousands of web pages they crawled as well? And are we going to get compensated? I mean, that's
and
that's
there's
a
been
very
some
bad
precedent for
principle.
this because there's like a Google 2015 lawsuit that had a ruling, as well as a 2019 one that I read about, which also they feel like if this one, to Carl's point, maybe it won't ever go to a judge, but it'll just get settled and we will never know the undisclosed amount. But regardless, there are some precedent there to what you're saying, Robert, which is like, when you know, what we're talking about is not you or me being able to scrape a page and look at it. I mean, any human could do that. It's, you know, millions of pages per second or whatever they're able to do, right? You know, so at what point is that okay? Is that no different than sitting 100 humans in a room and doing it? I guess Google has already gone through these fights, as you would imagine, from browsing and all that. All right, so we should probably get off this because we talk about that a lot. I just want to bring it up because to me it seemed like it was the biggest news article. Two other ways I was going to, but we can go either way you guys want here. I was going to quickly bring up Midjourney, only because Midjourney also had a copyright thing this week that I thought was interesting. And basically they changed their verbiage a little bit that says, hey, if you're using version 6 and you willfully and knowingly do something that breaks copyright, we're just going to come after you for the money. Like, it's like, this sentence is crazy. My computer just restart, so I don't have it. But it was a very plain language, not lawyer speak language that said, we may just come after you because we're getting hit and they're trying to fine us, meaning Midjourney. We're just going to come after you, which is the way I read it in the article was kind of like the Photoshop. Nobody's like suing Photoshop. So Photoshop's like, yeah, you can do a lot of things. Some of those things aren't legal with our tool, but we're a tool. We're not responsible if people use our tool and then go do illegal stuff. So really interesting stuff there. And then there was also stuff about like, version 6 was able to quickly almost exactly reproduce like a screenshot from the movie Joker from 2019 with an easy prompt. And other than lighting and some slight color offs, it was an exact replica of the screenshot of the Joker. And I thought that was really interesting too. So Midjourney definitely seems to be taking this as, hey, we didn't tell you to recreate the Joker from the scene, and that definitely might be illegal, and you definitely probably shouldn't put that on t-shirts. And if you do, hey, and you use our tool, we're going to come after you for that because we didn't tell you to do that with our tool. You did that.
So that's
a very interesting, like that's a, and that just like obviously not it's like, I don't know, it's like passing the buck, it's passing the blame. Like, you obviously trained it on this movie because otherwise I wouldn't have been able to do it.
Right. That's right. And that's the argument you wouldn't have like in a Photoshop, because Photoshop wasn't, as of 3, 4, 5 years ago, wasn't pre-trained on any data. I would have had to take in that movie still and put it in and manipulate it, and then was it fan art and right?
And fan art has been fine forever. I think part of what's happening in this is that Midjourney's interface allows you to see other people's art and take it and do something with it. And so if you are the person who created it and you have a free license or the lower license, you're not creating it in stealth mode. They are saying you are responsible for the dream that you dreamed up that violated copyright, right? Like in the old thing, if you could just draw that way and post it on a fan art site, no problem. It's just, this is a little too open, a little too
well, the question is about fair use, because that's always been like that's why on YouTube I've been really binging out on like these recap videos where people just recap movies, like 10 minutes in, you can recap a whole movie and they show clips, but it has to be, I think the ruling, it has to be educational, changes the way that the original content was created for entertainment or educational value. So how has it been completely, the output is complete replicates, or has it been changed enough? And I think that's always like that'll be the example that whichever lawyer puts out. It's like, oh, we've changed. It's like, no, you haven't. And even in the New York Times, what they said is like, we want all large language models destroyed that use New York Times data. Right. It's very strong language to put something like that, which I think everybody knows that's not going to happen. Not with too many models out there. You're like, you can't stop, especially on the open source side. It's literally impossible. So how does that kind of play into it too?
Yep. So just to do the Samsung thing, because we were just talking about Samsung, they're coming out with Galaxy AI. They're teasing Galaxy AI with their new Samsung phone. That launch is going to happen on January 17th. And there's a YouTube like teaser video. But the question is is Samsung going to put going to have AI and AI embedded in a device and be the first one that has that natively?
Yeah, it could be that Galaxy AI is just another, internet connected service. But it is interesting whether we're proceeding down this pathway that I think is going to change the way we think about intelligence, artificial intelligence on demand. We're moving very, very rapidly to a point where you'll be able to put very sophisticated models onto a small device and have it operate locally. It's already happening. So there's news this week about two Moscow researchers who developed a strategy to operate mixture of experts models like Mixtral 8X7B. Mixture of experts is this idea that you have large language models of a smaller size, but you have a gang of them, and each of them has a unique quality or capability, and together they accomplish something that a much, much larger model can do. Well, they've now added a new strategy that can deliver on standard computer hardware, so no GPU required. And this is a new rabbit hole for me to kind of explore today, but there's this approach called parameter offloading. And so you can imagine them taking all the billions of parameters that are present in this mixture of experts models and saying, okay, well, this one isn't being used right now, so I'm going to shuttle that out of memory. I'm not going to have it in there. And they have a strategy that works, very quickly to do that, so that you can run Mixtral 8X7B. So that's 56 billion parameters really working for you there, but do it on your regular computer. Now, this is leading to a thing that I am very interested in philosophically, which is this idea of society of mind, which is a collection of agents that work together to solve problems. So you can think of each LLM being a society of mind member and being given the opportunity to have conversation with other large language models. Now expand that to the point where everybody has, a local LLM AI operating on a small machine, and the ability to do just as, it was done with, SETI and these other major projects. You lend your compute power to an overarching intelligence collection. Now we're getting out there, but this could happen, that you would be able to take a local copy and have it connect to lots of others and achieve a much higher level of intelligence than would be available to even the largest of the single language models.
Like citizen astronomy or citizen
that's
science, right?
Search for extraterrestrial intelligence, and you lend your computer's off hours CPU to contribute to this massive compute project. So that's very interesting, and I think it's going to have big impact in the future.
Do you think something like a Galaxy AI? I feel that is, that's probably an Apple play coming too, right? They're gonna have, everyone's gonna have the AI built into their device in some form or fashion, like a Mistral or whatever the proprietary company has. So the question is, will it be as good as essentially a ChatGPT or better? And will actually people use it? Because I read the...
I think to answer quickly your proposition there, Carl, I think it's going to be more like what Andy said. I read recently that with 250 Chinese LLMs were released in 2023. 250 LLMs. So there isn't going to be one on your phone. I think it's going to be more a hive mind, to another way of putting it. One of these LLMs is really good at calculus, or one of them is really good at recipes or whatever it is. And that's where it's going to be. There's going to have to be a central brain that really goes out and curates all of these LLMs and knows which one to target and to task for a certain objective. I think that is honestly where we're going to end up going, because LLMs are getting too easy to put together, obviously. And the technology is getting so much better. Have you heard of Mamba? That's a whole nother technology that I can't explain it because I'm not smart enough, but it basically decreased the error rate over time as the language models use more parameters, right? And I'll post a link to it, the paper, in a second. Sorry, Beth, to cut you off. What were you going to say?
No, for the there's going to be a central processor that knows what's what. I think that's your on-device AI, right? Siri should know that. Alexa should know that, don't I?
Yeah, possibly.
Sorry if that happens in the background. But like that would make sense for those kinds of tools. You would ask a question and it wouldn't need to be super smart. It would just need to have super smart LLM friends as an AI.
Yeah, right.
So as far as, I don't know if you guys have other news that like came to the top of mind. I know one that I was just going to bring up really quick is, and this is sort of outside of my knowledge base, but GitHub, I guess, made their GitHub chat. Let me show you, GitHub Copilot chat, excuse me, universally available to everybody. And I was digging into this a little bit. I'm not a coder. I don't write code or anything. I've certainly had friends and work with coworkers along the years that have. But basically what they were saying is like, this is a tool that, developers, coders can use that can be really helpful, that just sort of sits on the side. I love this sort of Copilot idea. There was really cool things in there, like one-off commands that you don't have to use all the time, being able to use this chat function to pull in these commands that a coder might use. Also translating languages very quick, not just coding languages from like Java to C++ or something like that. And I may be saying those wrong, but that's the gist of it. But actual human languages as well, being able to transfer code into other languages like English to Portuguese or whatever the case is. So obviously it looks like a really, really important tool. And it's, I think, just really cool that something like that is out there, and the time to insight, the speed to development has got to be just rocketing. It goes back to one of the questions yesterday is like, how do you measure ROI? And Robert, you were kind of dealing with that. I was talking about that or whatever. This seems like a clear case of where you could easily measure ROI. You've got in-house developers, or maybe you're outsourcing it, and now they're able to get these answers faster, produce versions in other languages that they may need at a speed that they were never previously able to do. To me, that sounds like a clear ROI for companies. What do you guys think?
Absolutely. And it's sort of like what you've been able to do with ChatGPT on the code interpreter side, and be able to like put code in and ask about it and have a conversation about it. This is just that times like, I don't know, 500. Because if you've gone to GitHub, there's a ton of information, but it's in the separate documents, right? And so my assumption and understanding is that like with ChatGPT, it would be able to read the documents of the project and then discuss them, as opposed to having to click the individual links. I think it seems really great.
I want to throw something in there. Sorry to change topics, but I want to go into hardware a little bit with regard to Microsoft's Surface Pro. I read up recently that they're planning on having a dedicated Copilot button on their Surface Pros, which is really going down again the whole hardware conversation we were just having about how they're going to be integrating it. Of course, Microsoft's been saying this for the last 12 months. And on the same topic of Copilot, I just read recently that they've got, of course, they changed the name from Bing Chat to Copilot, but now there's an app they released on the 30th of December, which you can try Copilot on your iPhone and iPad. So with no login, for free. And that's powered by Prometheus, which is a version of the GPT-4 1.76 trillion parameter model. So that's some kind of new stuff for those who don't have access to OpenAI. Download the Copilot app for your iPad or iPhone, and you can play with that same functionality.
I'm going to shift to another subject, which is autonomous driving vehicles, one of the most complex areas of AI development, and one that has action associated with it. These are robot cars, right? So robot cars that actually can see what's going on around them, know where they are, drive safely. Well, Waymo, which is a spin out of Google, is one of the most advanced of these autonomous vehicle developers. And they just published the safety analysis, 7 million miles logged of their fully driverless vehicles. And you've seen some news lately, I'm sure, where they show a woman or, a man getting in the car and sort of live blogging the experience of being inside the car as it's driving through traffic and doing all kinds of wonderful things. Well, people are still a little nervous about that idea and think that there are safety considerations. Well, 7 million miles traveled. Waymo's driverless cars saw 85% fewer injury crashes.
Yeah.
85%. Okay. And that was, and then in other locations, Phoenix and San Francisco, particularly, which are, dense cities, and they're driving around in there, 80 and 70% injury crash reductions. That's an astounding improvement compared to humans driving. So trust your Waymo vehicle is the answer. Don't worry about it taking you awry.
So here's the I think I've been following that pretty close because what happened to the Cruise AI and that kind of tanked. But I think the autonomous vehicle industry is held to I think a ridiculous standard, because even though if you compare human to autonomous car like driving, and then you have 100,000 rides, humans have, I don't know, 5% higher likelihood to get into an accident versus a autonomous vehicle that has 1%. You're like, why wouldn't you take a 1%? But I think I think there's a perception that there's somebody to blame for,
exactly,
right?
Versus the liability.
Yes, who is liable then? Is it the autonomous car? Is it the company? Who is it? So I think that's where the autonomous industry has to unfairly or fairly, I don't know, would need to be 500,000 you get one accident versus 100 to 5% or whatever that percentage is. It's an unfair amount, but that's what the reality from a percentage.
It's going to turn into acceptable losses, just like malpractice insurance for doctors. Unfortunately, they're going to be like, well, we're still below the norm, or we're still, and it's going to suck. It's going to, unfortunately, I'd rather have somebody to blame and be able to sue somebody for killing my kid because they ran over him,
Right. I mean, that's kind of my point, Robert. One death is still too many, right?
Exactly.
And so we can have all the data that says, but humans kill way more humans in car accidents. And we're going to say okay, but that robot did it, or that AI did it, or whatever. And it did it once. And to your point, Carl, the percentages on paper may make sense all day long. Now, look, I don't know how many years away we are from this, but I always think to the future. And I definitely see my USAA insurance giving me discounts when my car has more AI assistance in there. It's going to be good driver discounts and things like that. I think that's obviously what this is going. I'm not saying tomorrow. I think we're a little bit out from that, but I definitely see that as more cars start to have these abilities like lane assist and these, automatic cruise control, which already kind of just sort of naturally went into the cars. I got a new car this year. Oh, it has this crazy feature, lane assist. Okay, whatever, we don't really think about these being these massive changes in the car. So it's really incremental and slow, but it is definitely happening. So I think it's just a matter of time. How long? 10 years, 20, I don't know, where, your insurance has definitely gone the other way, Carl, where they're saying, well, it's better for our insurance client or our customers to have these protective measures as part of the car, and that lowers our premiums, that lowers the amount that we're paying out because it's just safer, less distracted human drivers, so on and so forth. So it'd be really interesting to how slow is that shift, but I kind of feel like that shift is inevitable. And I'll just say for the record, I'm totally pro go ahead and drive me around car. I I will give up the wheel in a second. So as soon as that's commercially available, I'm in.
I think in some ways it's also about the feeling that we can intervene with a driver, and when the AI is doing something, there's no like human interface in that experience. And on that note, I'm going to bring up Echo, which is a AI assisted stethoscope, and it's actually consumer, like you could buy it. You don't need doctor stuff, and it's about $500 or a little less depending on what kind you get. But it is there's like an AI sensor at the end of the stethoscope, and there's an app, and so it can track. You can immediately get that like single sensor EEG. Sorry, I get them confused. And the story was that the NHS has bought a bunch and is deploying them in their GP core. Not all of them, it's a pilot. But it is in a place where, and their system, there's like a super long wait. Once your GP diagnoses, like you should see a cardiologist before you get to see the cardiologist. And there's lots of stats about like excess deaths and that kind of stuff. And this allows for more diagnostic stuff to happen without the cardiologist right there, right? So maybe you can get on meds, or maybe you can get like, this is an interesting pilot. And related to the self-driving car, this is not a self-driving doctor, right? There's an actual doctor using the tool. And then having an opportunity to intervene. And
I have one quick new medical just on that one, and I know we're kind of over time, but we'll run through real quick and hit our last ones. I can do this one super quick. Scientists discover first new antibiotics in over 60 years using AI. Super cool story. We're seeing more and more of this. In this particular case, they used the set of models. Approximately 12 million commercially available compounds were screened. From there, the researchers acquired 280 of these compounds and conducted tests against MRSA in laboratory setting. This approach led them to identify 2 promising antibiotic candidates from the same class. When they used it in a mouse, there was an improvement in MRSA or treating MRSA by a factor of 10. So we're going to just see, 2024, we're going to see more and more and more of these stories, and I'm here for it. I think this is directly saving lives or going to save lives. So I love seeing stories about that. So just want to share that one real quick.
Yeah.
Andy, Carl, you guys got any stories that we missed real quick you want to hit?
No, that science one was the second. Oh, the last quick one, it was really touched on Johnny, Ive, Sam Altman, and some, I think they poached a Apple designer, or right. I don't know who they poached from Apple, but they're building some sort of AI hardware that is not supposed to compete with the phone. So we'll see what that comes into, but it's an interesting story to see where that's going.
I did look really quick because Greg threw a comment on, so did Erica as well. Thank you, Erica, asking way back when Robert was talking about AI licensing. I guess this is also Waze, not to be confused with the map company Waze, but this is WAYZ AI. And Greg shared this. So I had to go to that website. I'd never heard of them before. I had to convert it to English. Even when I read it in English, it was still over my head. The best I can tell you from it is it says this is one of the things it says: smart city, intelligent urban decision-making, helping urban management as a fine embroidery. This is what it says. I'll read it really quick since Greg brought it up, because it sounds super cool, but man, this is wordy and over my head. Build an urban AI brain to realize full stack intelligent decision-making services that provide dynamic perception, global insight, intelligent mining and prediction as the city's spatial temporal grid level, and build a holographic ecological map of urban development.
Wow.
I'm all for it, but man, when I have to dig into that, I feel like maybe Andy, I'm just going to pass that to you and be like, Andy, in a week, come back and tell us why Waze is super cool.
No, it's like you see those guys on the side of the road with like that tripod, and they're like watching the road and the intersection, that kind of stuff. No, let me introduce you to the live stream hologram.
I think when when Greg creates tasks for me by just putting a text in there. I think we have to delegate that to him.
Yeah.
Greg,
Okay.
come back to me and tell us what you meant.
Come back to us and tell us why it's super cool. Because man, that website was wordy, and I was like, well, maybe because it's for it had the translation on it, but there's just a lot going on. Seems super cool to me though. All right, well, listen, we'll wrap it up. That's hopefully you guys found some interesting stuff there in the news. Lots of cool stuff going on. We're just at the beginning of the year. I won't say the news cycle has been a little slow. It probably has, but a little slow over the holiday, as you would imagine. So it's going to pick back up here. And as usual, we're going to have more than we can cover on any given Wednesday. So that's it. Tomorrow we'll be back. Oh, I don't have it in front of me. Tomorrow is Super Alignment.
Super Alignment.
Yep.
Thank you. Super Alignment. And then Friday. Oh, yeah, cool. Friday, we're also going to be talking about sort of what do you need to do in 2024 for prompt engineering. So all the fun tips and tidbits. We're going to share everything we know with you guys as much as we can to help you get the maximum results out of doing prompt engineering. So that's what's coming up the rest of the week. We will see you guys tomorrow. Until then, bye.
Happy Wednesday.